Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Moms Talk Sex podcast with me, Mor Yelvington, your host. I am so excited for today's conversation because I feel like a lot of you are going to relate to what me and the beautiful Stacey are going to talk about. Hi, Stacey.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm doing good, and I'm so happy that you're here because I love your perspective for what we talked about a little earlier. So before we dive in, how about you introduce yourself and let us know what it is that you do in the world?
Sure. So my name is Stacey, and I am based in New York on Long Island, and I'm a mom of three. My kids are 8, 11, and 14, and I am a full-time content creator and blogger. And I write mostly about stuff in like the family parenting, travel, lifestyle, food, beauty world. I've been doing this just about a decade now, which is insane. And as my children and my family has evolved, so is kind of what my focus is. It used to be like toys and stuff like that, and now it's a lot more experiential. And now, of course, as a 46-year-old woman, I'm talking a lot about women's health and perimenopause and trying to help educate the world about that and just kind of getting by day to day and what that looks like as a mom of three with kids in different schools.
I love that. And what an amazing opportunity to really showcase what it looks like for us at this day and age. Like you said, three kids, being married. What does intimacy actually look like for you guys?
So I think this is like a funny topic, and I talk about this a lot with friends of mine that now especially went from a one parent was out 5 days a week at an office and one parent was at home or working freelance or, working part-time to now two people full-time at home and the ups and downs of something like that and constantly, living on the line of happiness and murder. And just how, I think as we go into different stages of our lives as parents and our kids kind of evolve from being small creatures that go to bed by 8 o'clock to larger creatures that need to be driven all over the place. And, you don't fall asleep because you need to pick them up at 11:30 and what that kind of, how that like re-jostles your relationship and how school hours during the day really, to me at least, becomes a really nice time to take advantage of like a couple's time because on a Saturday night we still like to go out with our friends, but sometimes we're too tired or we have to shuttle the kids, or it's like Saturday date night isn't necessarily a carte blanche for Saturday date night anymore. So sometimes Saturday date night is a walk in the middle of the day or, having a little fun once the bus pulls away or something like that.
I love that. So really, like from your perspective, what does it take to get to a marriage where you're married over a decade, you have three kids? How do you really keep that intimacy going now that you're kind of past that, honeymoon phase? There's a lot more responsibility. Maybe there's a little bit more time, but not as much. Like you said, it's like you go from having little kids where all your attention is on them and then they grow and now it's a whole different ball game, right? So how do you maintain that close relationship, that intimacy with your husband?
So I think two things. And I feel like when we like were first married and dating and everything was like rosy because there was nothing to do but be in love. um, I remember reading a lot about obviously communication, which it's like the number one thing everyone talks about, but it's true. And also just this whole concept of like these shared memories. And we were very lucky. We met early. We were 23. We dated for a long time. We were engaged for a year. We got married. We were in no rush. And we both kind of knew that at 30 we would start, investigating children. But we had a good 7 years together before that, where we went through all these different wonderful phases. We traveled a ton and we built so many wonderful memories together that when it gets a little bit tough at this point, because now it's, there's just life going on. I sit down at night and even if I'm in a bad mood, I turn my head and I see a picture of us on like London Bridge or, on a cruise in Greece. And you're like, oh, I liked you then. And you're laughing because that's true. And I think that it's just stuff like that. And I think also like, little kindnesses that maybe your partner of 800 million years only knows that you really appreciate. Or, like last night, my husband saw that I was sitting and reading a book on the couch and he said, I just made tea. Would you like some? And I mean, that's not like something that's going to get him, an Oscar nomination, but it's just like that small kindness that you're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you still feel cherished and like he
Yes.
sees you and he's caring for you. And I
Yes.
think that's so big. And that
Yep.
also opens the door when you do these little things to have more intimacy in the bedroom because you feel a lot more warm and
Yeah.
cozy inside, right?
Yeah. I mean, that might have been foreplay. I'm just kidding. I got you gas. Okay, I'm sold. Let's go.
Yes.
I mean, I joke about this with my friends all the time that there are these little annoying things that we all have to do in our lives to just keep our lives moving forward, taking out the garbage, doing the recycling, we compost, like bringing out the compost, getting gas, buying more eggs, replenishing the milk that what used to be like hot and spicy now sometimes can become transactional. But for you, it's like, I don't want to put on pants. Let's go, as long as you promise to go get more eggs. Will you go to Costco? If you go to Costco, we'll do it today and tomorrow.
Yes, I love this. It could be a great game. I see like in my mind, right? There's a chart. Okay, all
It's
the
like a
things we
bingo
need to
card. Yes.
do. You get you do the Costco, you get head, right? You do this, I'll do this for you. Okay, yes, let's play that. Instead of those, those that game dice, it's like a sexy game dice where it's like you toss the dice. They should just be like
Non-sexy game dice.
gas, change my tires, right? Wash the
Go
back,
open the
clean the
mail.
bathroom.
Anything you want,
Yes,
anywhere.
yes. Oh, I think we're onto something. We should invent
But
that.
I think the funny part about this is like, as much as that's so not sexy and intimate, I feel like it so is. And when you finally like joke about it with a friend, they're like, "Oh my God, wait, I thought it was only me that does that." And you're like, "No, no, it's everyone because nobody wants to get gas."
That is so true. And I also feel like in our stage, because there's so much that we do on a regular basis, having somebody just take off some of that load really
Yes.
opens the door and allows you to be like, oh, now I have space to let something else in. If you take some of that, I have more room for you, and I feel
Literally
like that's
and
where it kind of
figuratively.
works. Exactly. Exactly. I can make room for you between 1 and 2 o'clock if you make that space for me.
So true. It's so true. But I mean, look, I think that not to say that people with two kids don't have these things, but with three kids, I mean, I'm sure you also have this where like we have to have like a summit some days where we're like, it's like I always joke that I need that like risk board with the soldiers on it where I'm like, okay, you have to go to basketball, but you have time to pick up her baseball, but then you drop off to softball and then we have time to do that. And then we have a meeting and this and that. And then we're like, wait a minute, like last night, we're like, wait a minute, the 8-year-old doesn't have anyone to watch, so one of us can't do what we had to do because we have to be home with him.
Right. That is this day for me. Tuesdays, Thursdays are like my crazy days like that.
Yes.
And a lot of times I'm like, how do I need two of me. Like, how do I even make
Yes.
that work? And then at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, when I'm finally like, okay, we're sitting looking at each other, and I'm like, what? How did we
Right.
even come back to bed? How are we even in bed right now? What's
I
happening?
know. I know. And it's funny because my daughter, who's 14, is at the point now for a couple of years where she babysits for us. So, like, we can go out and we can, run, one of us can run to one thing and, both, or like my middle one plays basketball and we both want to go to his game. So, like, my daughter will stay home with my little one. But if one of them has an activity, it messes everything up. But now, like, so she used to be our Saturday night babysitter and it was amazing because once we shifted to needing someone to watch them, to just being like bye and leaving, it was
Right.
incredible. But it was a short window because she started getting babysitting jobs, which is amazing because it's like the best thing for a teenage girl to do. And she makes, all this money so she can buy whatever she wants, which is like the best case scenario ever. But it takes away our social life. And but our middle one started saying like, I think if you're not going too far away, I could babysit. But it's like a brother on brother action. So, part of the time when we're out, we're like, do you think they're just beating each other? And we're like, but we're out, so does it matter? I'm just kidding. No, and the truth was, I think that my middle one felt so empowered by having this responsibility when we did it for the first time last week, and we were going a mile away, and we were at our friend's house, and I was like, we could be home in 3 minutes if anything happens, and they just like it worked, and I think it like empowered my 11-year-old to feel like he wasn't being just the big brother beating up his little brother. It was like he was responsible, so it was kind of fun. But
I
yeah,
love that. I love creating those opportunities where they can feel empowered. Kind of like with us, right? It's like, how can I be in my power more so I can be more of me to give also to you guys?
yeah, and I think also being, a mom of three kids, I'm such like a big proponent of seeing all the invisible things and talking at length about like the invisible load of motherhood. And even just like my daughter wanted to go to like a new doctor yesterday, and I said to her, you're home and I'm not, like type in these words and just see if you could find one in our area, and this is what your insurance is called, see if they take it. And like a couple hours later I came home and she's like, that was very confusing. And I'm like, welcome. Welcome to every time anyone needs anything. It takes me hours to find anything, and then it's invisible, so nobody sees it. But I think because of that, it's just we carry such a heavy load every day that, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying, as a fact, we do many things every day that are invisible, and because of that, it's exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. It's physically exhausting. It's just like you just feel like a ugh, at the end of the day. And sometimes you want to just zone out, and that might mean scrolling on your phone, or that might mean reading, or taking a hot bath. I don't know if people do that, but I've kind of reevaluated where I find replenishing energy. I don't even know what to call it, but when we go on vacation, I don't let anyone watch TV. I make everyone read and talk to each other. And so when we got home from our last vacation in February, about a year ago, I read so much that I found that it was just so enjoyable. And so now, instead of like watching TV or doing anything at night, I try to read. Sometimes I take a hot shower, I get into bed, I read, which is wonderful. And sometimes I read on the couch. But I feel that like that small thing has just brought so much joy into my life, and has like, I hate the word self care, but I feel like it's like, and I think the concept of taking care of oneself is so different for each person, but
Yes.
whatever it is that brings someone the joy to have their energy back is wonderful, and no one should judge it. And at the end of the day, you're just so spent that whatever little thing can get you back to 100% is amazing, and you have to like lean into that. um so I think that's a big part of it too, because we're so running around, we're spread so thin, there's so many invisible things we're doing that you're just exhausted. And sometimes you just want to feel like, somebody sees you. And sometimes that somebody needs to be you, and it needs to just be like being left alone.
Yeah. So, how do you manage those times when you want to be left alone and not hurting your partner's feelings? Right? Like, how do you find a space to be like, this is my time and
Right.
it's not about you?
I mean, I think again, like I think going back to communication, I think that it's so like communication at this point where everyone's like communication, communication, that it's almost like white noise. But I think sometimes you just have to say, like, I'm exhausted, and maybe, if you're honest, that's appreciated. I also think that, like I was saying before, I think you have to readjust what you're available for and when. So, if you find that you have energy to do things like that in the morning, then share that. And if that works, then you get a match, gold star. And if it doesn't, then say, like, I mean, I've said, like, I'm exhausted. I was doing 800 things today. I like just need to stare into space. And, not to say that always goes one way or the other, but I mean, look, we've been together for so long. He knows what to do when he wants to get what he wants sometimes. And sometimes I kick him and sometimes I give in. But I think that's marriage for 300 years, right? I mean,
Right.
but also, I think that's amazing, right? Like, I think it's amazing that you're so close with this other person, that you know each other so well that, you know, you have that.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And I feel like you guys are so lucky. I don't feel like a lot of people have that, in their life. I'm grateful to have that with my husband as well. And this is really about finding a time to find out what you like together and what you like separate, and how to create those boundaries and those times for you where you don't become roommates. So what would you say is the number one thing that helps you not just become roommates? Because I feel like that when you get to this stage of life, a lot of couples stop having sex. It
Yeah.
like kind of drops off. It's the first thing we drop off. So what do you do in your marriage not to get to that point?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like I was saying kind of before, that depending on what your schedule is, like I think that maybe, you know, textbook intimacy would look like at night you get into bed and that's when the magic happens. But I think that, we live in a world at this point, post pandemic, that the world is turned on its side and everything that happens in your life looks different than 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And, 6 years ago, he was in the city 5 days a week. 6 years ago, I was probably breastfeeding, or maybe not, depending on how old my son was. But like, I always say, like, I spent my 30s wanting to get pregnant, being pregnant, recovering from being pregnant, nursing, or trying to get pregnant. I don't know if I said that one already, but like, you have 3 kids too, right? So, like,
Yeah,
an entire decade spanning that,
yeah,
where you're in one phase of your life with, intimacy with your husband. And, I think as your kids get older, and especially now that they're out of the house, like I said, like I have more energy when the bus pulls away from my third bus of the morning than I do at 11 o'clock at night. So I think just kind of looking at your own schedule and looking, talking to your partner about when, obviously assuming both of you still want to have sex, like when that works. And while it might not, you might not be on the same page, it might need to be a negotiation that if you both want to get what you want, you have to give a little, get a little. So,
yeah,
and I think it depends. I think that also when, um, now that so many people are, and I said this before a little bit, but now that you're both in the house all day long, that changes your schedule. And that also changes kind of your, I don't know what the word is, like ebb and flow, let's say, where it's like sometimes absence makes the heart grow fonder. Um, so it's kind of hard when you're both sitting here all day. Sometimes you're like, "Ooh, I have my next meeting's in a half hour. Let's go." And sometimes it's like, "Just get away from me."
yeah, like anything else in life. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. If anybody wants to find you, where can they find you on the internet?
Yes, so my blog is called The Mint Chip Mama, and it's www.themintchipmama, and mama is MAMA .com. And then I'm across all socials at The Mint Chip Mama. Just don't forget the. Yeah, and I also like do guest speaking, and I love being on podcasts. So I'm going on this like big podcast kick. So I'm always happy to talk to anybody about anything. It's funny. I always talk about like the same subjects. And last week I talked about 80s and 90s music, which was amazing. And today was a little different, right? Exactly. But we ended up talking for 2 hours. It was amazing. So I know we were having like the best conversation ever. So yeah, I'm just like I'm trying to find like-minded people and people that are also, going through all these same things that you and I are both going through. And it's funny because I feel like you and I didn't speak so much in advance, but we're both at
Right.
this like total same stage with the same age kids, 3 kids, it's kind of cool. Yeah.
It is. And I'm so happy that you took time out of your day, busy
I,
day, to be
yes.
here with me. So I'm really grateful for that. And for you
Thank you
guys
so much.
listening, if you have any questions for Stacey or for me about anything related, please reach out. We're here for you to support you on your healing journey to have more sex and love and intimacy in your life and relationship. So thanks you for tuning in, and I will tune in for you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.